Once an epicenter of the suburban lifestyle, the shopping mall's purpose and importance have slowly faded away. The fall of the mall, or more broadly kind of known as the retail apocalypse, had been happening before the pandemic had started. But this trend has accelerated immensely over the last 12 months as consumers have decided to stay more inside and choose instead to shop online. In the coming years, it's predicted that hundreds of America's about 1,100 traditional shopping malls will need to close. There's many reasons why the traditional mall concept has been fading. Think about just specialty retailers having a tougher time in the market, those going bankrupt. So then you have less kind of variety or interesting shops within these shopping malls. You also have anchor department stores that have went out of favor with consumers. You have an increased amount of online shopping that's happening now. And if you look at just each shopping mall, generally, they tend to be kind of carbon copies of each other. So if you've seen one, you've seen them all, and you don't need to keep going back to continuously see them, especially when there's other options in the market to shop. So this has caused an influx of vacancies in these traditional malls. And as more vacancies start to happen, the economics of these shopping malls start to crumble and then starts to really cause a lot of issues with these mall owners. But that being said, the mall as a whole, even without any shops in it, does have some value. And if you look at that just in the immense amount of square footage that these malls have, also the ample amount of parking, it does then take somebody that's kind of imaginative, somebody that can think about how do they transform the current traditional shopping malls into maybe something else, somebody that definitely is a trailblazer or maybe a history buff, which I'll explain a little bit at the end of this video. Now, I want to kind of talk about a ton of different maybe usages of these traditional malls, some that have already started to happen, some that will increasingly be seen across the United States. The one that you're hearing the most about right now, and the one that maybe seems the most obvious for people, is the concept of turning some of the mall's maybe anchor stores or a part of the mall's square footage into distribution centers or fulfillment centers. Obviously, consumers' dollars are shifting from like in-store shopping, retail into e-commerce. But that being said, there isn't a lot of examples that are out there in the market right now of like retrofitting stores or just taking and allocating some of the mall over to these fulfillment centers or distribution centers. There has been some knockdowns and then rebuilds or just a complete retrofit of the whole thing, but not in a mixed use way. And that might be because it presents a ton of different challenges. One, it would need to be rezoned into something that's maybe mixed or industrial. You also have like this loss of attraction that happens when you do take away a mall in a store. You also might have loss of sales tax because you're not having as many stores. So needing to get something rezoned and having that be in the hands of a local government, they might not be all that interested in doing that because of those two reasons. Less kind of town-to-town tourism into theirs, and then less kind of sales tax that could happen. You also need to have them have the availability of having a ton of like trucks, 18-wheelers and things needing to load, unload at all hours of the night. They need to make sure that those are kind of away from just consumers and cars. And then if you are utilizing some of these anchor tenants, those tenants are really looked at as the drivers of traffic into the mall, into the interior mall, and that drives up rental prices. And if that's not happening, then the overall value of that mall ends up going down to that mall owner. And that's not to say that some of these distribution centers, fulfillment centers might be turned into some like type of hybrid model that might change the amount of foot traffic that might go in there. So if it is like a return center or if it's a click and collect center, there might be more people that do come into that mall location that might help things out. And if you look at Amazon, which has been kind of thrown around time and time again with this idea of changing over some of those beat up malls into fulfillment centers, their model traditionally has been to buy up cheap land and real estate outside of cities into kind of suburban, rural markets. But as the customers have evolved and grew, as the categories in which Amazon focuses on, like grocery, has changed, and just the shipping expectation shortening up to hours now. Amazon needs to diversify that strategy and now is looking to open up as many fulfillment centers as possible, some small, some larger, some medium sized, kind of all around dense urban and city areas. So this makes those traditional malls attractive, and e-commerce as a whole takes up about 3 times the space of a traditional retail storefront. So if you think about how fast Amazon is growing, they cannot build these distribution fulfillment centers fast enough. And on the other hand, you have Walmart that does have 5,000 plus kind of mini warehouses already in their store fleet that they are now starting to shift over some of that into kind of micro fulfillment centers. They have that already kind of built in. Amazon needing to stay up with that competition, knowing how important this is to add these distribution centers. This conversation of converting malls into distribution centers, though it might be challenging to get over some of these hurdles and some of those reconfigurations, we might be in the early innings of the transformation that can happen with malls in this way. Another way to look at malls is kind of converting this into office space. Now, might not be all that attractive right now as people are moving to work from home situations and people are spending less time in traditional offices, but if the portion of malls is kind of allocated to office space or co-working space, the owners of those malls and then also the other tenants are generally pretty hopeful of that scenario, because this does potentially drive traffic. Also for mall owners, if it is a co-working space, it could act as kind of an incubator for potentially new and exciting brands that will eventually want to have their own storefront. So you can have maybe some agreement, some exclusive kind of partnership with a co-working space and the retail unit or consumer unit. If brands and businesses need to have space, you have first right of refusal to give that to them. Maybe you even get a cut of that business depending on what type of agreement you kind of come up with. And office real estate really looks for 2 things. One, a blank canvas, also a bunch of parking, and malls offer them that. There's also some amenities that a lot of workers are interested in. They obviously have kind of built-in meeting places. They have bars and restaurants to go out after. They have places to run their errands when they have little breaks. So you're seeing this kind of happen already. Google has already kind of started to transform a California shopping mall. Also Epic Games that makes Fortnite is doing similar things in a North Carolina shopping mall complex. Another way to look at the conversion of old shopping malls could be in some way adding kind of places to live, adding some apartment complexes. And believe it or not, America's first mall does have some of that already happening. They have turned 40 or 50 shops into micro apartments. So the almost 2-century-old arcade Providence now houses a mixture of these micro unit apartments, also bars, restaurants, different shops. And this kind of communal element that was attractive for workers and offices also is attractive for people to live in. They're able to have a ton of different things kind of right in their space. They can have bars, restaurants, places to meet people. They don't have to be just stuck to their couple 100 square foot apartment. They have tons of attraction, and depending on what the mall has available to them, kind of endless food choices and a number of other things that could be attractive for people to live in an apartment complex that's integrated into the mall. Another kind of usage that you're seeing start to happen more and more is with the conversion of shopping malls into schools. A number of these old malls have started to be converted into them in some mix of the square footage. And then you're also seeing a complete retrofit in some cases, and one that is only a few miles from where I am at in Austin, Texas. The Austin Community College purchased the 1.2 million square foot Highland Mall a few years ago and has converted that over to a full on campus that features a workplace training, features a hospitality and restaurant training program, a bunch of high-tech kind of STEM labs and media centers. Malls have also started to convert over to like a combination of different businesses that would be kind of lumped into health, wellness, and fitness. And a recent survey actually had kind of health, wellness, and fitness as the number 2 and number 3 thing that consumers would love to have within their malls. And these concepts include the obvious kind of walk-in clinics. You also have fitness centers and gyms, but also brands that sell kind of fitness equipment or fitness apparel. And up until the pandemic started, fitness studios were front and center into a lot of these malls' transformations because they drum up a lot of business for the surrounding and interior businesses as people go to those locations multiple times a week. But you're also seeing healthcare providers, different type of specialized medicine, and those offices starting to open up a lot into malls. And then most recently, even though it's kind of a temporary usage, you're seeing a ton of malls, both in kind of exterior locations, maybe old abandoned anchor locations, or just the parking lot as a whole, are being utilized as COVID testing or vaccination sites. And finally, you're starting to see more shopping malls also be utilized in a church setting. Because of some of the depressed kind of commercial real estate prices, it makes sense sometimes as growing congregations are looking for space to just occupy an old anchor or exterior storefront within a mall that can be retrofitted for the church's needs. But it's not the best kind of tenant. Churches as a whole, most of their main business is getting done on Sunday before the mall even opens. These churches also need to be self-contained, so you don't have a direct access point into the interior mall. And though there is a ton of foot traffic that goes to these churches, that doesn't necessarily always translate, because as somebody's going in there to maybe worship, they're not necessarily thinking about then flipping their brain over to consumerism. Now, as I mentioned kind of earlier in the video, I did say that kind of imaginative mall owners that are looking to transform their malls into something grander, into something that could stand the test of time in the future, might want to look at history. Victor Gruen is the pioneer of the shopping mall. Gruen's design for the Southdale Center would become one of the single most influential architecture designs in the post-war era. The problem is that the mall itself was only a small fraction of Victor Gruen's vision for the Southdale Center. His vision really included it being a dense, mixed-use, pedestrian-based urban center that would include apartments, schools, medical centers, outdoor parks, and office buildings. So it sounds kind of familiar to the things that I was talking about earlier in this video. Yet developers never completed Victor Gruen's vision. Instead of surrounding these shopping malls with dense mixed-use developments, they surrounded them with parking lots. Communities did ultimately blossom around these shopping malls, but it was nothing like the vision that Victor Gruen had. And not even Walt Disney, arguably one of the most creative and inventive people to ever live, couldn't wrap his head around Victor Gruen's vision. And you can kind of read a little bit about that if you look at the history of Epcot/Progress City. Just want to end on some final thoughts. Changing shopping malls from machines of selling into machines for living could potentially mean massive write-offs in property values. Turning a shuttered mall into an e-commerce fulfillment center or a school or a church or an apartment complex can devalue these shopping malls somewhere between 60 and 90%. While the land that these malls sit on may offer better recovery if they are used for different mixed use developments, historically, this is not something that has happened, but analysts predict that 15 to 17% of the malls in America today will need to be redeveloped if they are going to have a long-term use. So the question remains, will mall operators continue to be reactive or go on the offense and channel Victor Gruen and be proactive, ensuring that their properties have a place in America's future?
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to help support me, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button on this video. If this is the first time you've been introduced to my videos. Would love for you guys to be a part of my community by subscribing to my channel. I upload several videos just like this weekly. And if you guys want to connect further outside of this platform, I do include all of my social media links down below. I just want to thank you guys again for your time. Hopefully I gave you some value in return, and we'll see you guys on the next video.